Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 10th talk of the Digital Food Series 2021. I'm Tiffany Tong. I'm the co-organizer and moderator of this series. I'm Chinese. I'm also Dutch. I'm currently calling from the Netherlands. I'm living in the Netherlands. I'm a global strategist. I'm focusing on sustainability, technology, and transformation, and bridging East with West. Together with Dick Veerman, founder of Foodlog, we developed the concept of the Digital Food 2021 to focus on the theme of connect data, technology, and strategy, and to connect people, ideas, and regions. I would like first to thank you for the sponsors: KTBA, InfoSupport, Thinkforce, City of Rotterdam, Province Zuid-Holland, Greenport, West-Holland, Leiden, Delft Erasmus University, and Wageningen University. So the theme of the digital food is to discuss how will the food industry standards evolve with digital technologies, which including blockchain, artificial intelligence. Who will take the lead to coordinate with chain players to define data standards, interfaces, and governances, and how will the roles of current players change? In our very first talk, launching talk of digital food, we discussed with, for example, then the president of Global Gap about these topics, especially also about the roles of certification. So today we will actually continue the theme we covered in the previous talks and focus on the topic of fair trade. Today we have three panelists, Jeroen Douglas. He's the executive director of Solidaridad network, and Dick Epma, professor at the Dell Blockchain Lab, and also agro-entrepreneur from Africa, Babatunde. And today in our audience, we also have an audience of entrepreneurs from Latin America and Asia. So I'm looking forward to hear your perspective. So Jeroen, before we start, let's I will also introduce yourself, but then first I'd like to ask the audience a poll question. Bianca, please. So that's the poll, and then after your presentation, we'll show what the audience think about the label fair trade. So I understand fair trade is the organization on the certification now exists this year for 25 years, isn't it? It's anniversary.
Yes, Tiffany, thank you for having me, and also thanks Dick Veerman for organizing this. Indeed. Fair trade as a global label exists now officially 25 years, but we as Solidaridad, we already initiated fair trade by the end of the 80s under the local name of Max Havelaar. So the Netherlands actually was the guinea pig for the model way back at the end of the 80s. And it took 6 years to indeed create a global platform, which is Fair Trade Labeling Organization. So yes, 25 years. And our organization needed 25 years to get to fair trade. We are 50 years of age, 51 by now.
So actually, I would like to ask you, when you look back this 25 years as the person behind this movement, what would you say is your biggest achievement?
Well, of course, it's not been done alone. We did it with thousands of people. But the biggest achievement, I think, is that we started a movement towards internalizing the externalities into the supply chain. So the economic term of externalities is like putting a price tag on such things like clean water, putting a price tag on healthy soil, putting a price tag on fair labor conditions. So sustainability has a cost. So just to ensure that future generations can also make a good living on this planet. So with fair trade, we really tried to create with the mechanism of a fair price a better income and a better livelihood for involved farmers. So that's the essence.
So let's see from our audience whether people in our today's participant are well aware of the fair trade movement. Bianca, can you show us okay, we have 70% of audience are well aware and also would make their purchasing decision based on a label. Congratulations. That's a big achievement. So please, in coming 10 minutes, can you tell us more about the organization and what's your plan for the future?
Absolutely, Tiffany. And I will tell you something about fair data, which we call the Fair Trade 2.0. And I do that through some slides with your permission. So I hope you'll all be able to see them right now. And so just indeed briefly, who are we? As I said already at my opening pitch, Solidaridad works now 51 years in working with under-resourced communities. And indeed, I would say our biggest achievement from that early period was that we have initiated the concept of fair trade again at the end of the 80s, which was even before the Berlin Wall came down, reading the sign of the times by then. And that fair trade component has been, I would say, the backbone of the further development of our organization. As you can see nowadays, Solidaridad, we are working as an international civil society organization, trying to organize globalization bottom up, as we call it, working in 40 countries worldwide in a network structure with regional directors, strong regional directors who echo the voices from the global south. And we are continuing in building those sustainable supply chains, which were inspired on the model of fair trade, as I said at the beginning. So here you can find our legacy briefly. So every layer of our pyramid of change, as we call it, corresponds almost with a decade. So we first worked very hard on fair trade. Also, organic came up in that time, whereby the principal driver for change were the consumers. So final consumers proactively looking, as your poll has showed, for the label on products, on product labeling. And the primary purchasing motive was not so much the brand of a company, but rather the label fair trade. And that, as a first mover, has created a lot of traction. So 10 years later, by the end of the 90s, we saw also companies taking over the principles of fair trade in what was then being baptized corporate social responsibility. So here you can see other label initiatives like UD Certified, Rainforest Alliance, many company-based standards as well. And companies tried to mainstream the principles of fair trade. So another 10 years later, by the first 10 years of the new millennium, actually a little bit earlier, we saw that the next level of building sustainable supply chains based on this principle of internalizing the externalities were the roundtables and multi-stakeholder initiatives. One could say building sector alliances. So the first one is really the consumer is the central protagonist. Then the company is, and now a pre-competitive mindset. Roundtable for sustainable palm oil, as we all know, Bon Sucre for sugarcane, and some commodity-specific roundtables were created to ensure the principles of sustainability getting into the supply chain. And now, again, 10 years later, we see that the first three layers, they certainly have created traction, awareness, but it has not yet led to systemic change. So the three first layers of the pyramid, consumers, companies, and producers, can be classified as voluntary sustainability standards, whereas the governmental layer is focusing on building mandatory national, but also multinational sustainability standards and agreements. In practice, it's a smart mix between voluntary and also mandatory principles. Due diligence agenda is coming up. National standards in larger producing countries are coming up, reclaiming sustainability. So this is our legacy where we come from. So based on that, we have built our new 5-year strategy, 21-25. I encourage you to download our strategy online under the title, Let's Reclaim Sustainability. Because what we have seen is that the essence of sustainability has sometimes lost its credibility. We have seen a lot of wild growing of standards, of labels, and we feel it our task to be the custodian of the concept of sustainability in relation to farmers. Farmers first is our motto. So built in that strategy, we have our what we think our innovation areas. So I don't want to bother you too much with this, but this is our what we call our innovation house that counts for the next 5 years at least, where we are looking to fair food systems, fair labor practices, fair ownership models, and building our own in-house sustainability definition, maybe an index. But as you can see, the foundations for this entire innovation house is about fair data. And the last 5 minutes, I hope to oh my goodness, something happened. I hope to use for reasons of discussing the fair data principles and fair data as a theme. Because what I can see, the digital times are the sign of the times. And our key issues we want to see under this fair data is on 3 levels. At farm level, we see the huge intelligence of data coming also to smallholder farmers and unassumed farmers who are facing the wall of information coming to them and also facing the benefits of good service suppliers, but also the fear of being locked in. So we see the issue of fragmentation of data throughout the world, so that farmers cannot build a fist and they are not able to speak out. We see also that the value created by the data through their intelligence is not captured by the farmers. So that's one component. The second component is about the supply chains. We see, of course, the birth of e-commerce, digital trade, digital food, data valuation. I think you have been discussing this before. And on a consumer level, I think it's about time to reclaim sustainability, to get over some fake news concepts, if I may say. So fair trade on data, which is actually fair data, fair trade 2.0, as I call it, is an emerging movement from the awareness that the data as such is very asymmetrical in terms of value share. I mean, I always use the case of coffee. The coffee farmer gets only between 3 and 6% of the retail price for the coffee beans he or she produces. Same with cocoa and bananas, etc. But in the case of data, it's even more extreme. We are nowadays paying to produce data that can be captured for free by big data companies. So the asymmetry in the value chain of data is huge. So another big item is that we can see that with data, we can open the pathway to go beyond certification. Through blockchains, I think the next speaker will discuss that as well, because we have also identified that certification schemes quite often are absorbing up to even 60-70% of the premium consumers are paying just to maintain the system. This is not always the case, but we have evidence to it. And that's not because of greed. No, it's just because of the inefficiency and the cost inefficiency of many certification schemes. It's a flaw of the model, one could say. And data also offers us the opportunity to do things in a better way. We also see, of course, the desire to move from centralized to decentralized empowerment away from big data mines towards the awareness that everybody who has connectivity to the internet is a data farmer. You even don't need land anymore nowadays. We're all data farmers. So based on this experience, we are now at the stage, and very early days again, to do a first definition of what we think is fair data. And that is, as you can see here, and I think this is an important piece of text, is a farmer's movement for fairness in the production and also in the trade in commodities and associated data, based on the principles of fair participation, fair ownership, fair value, and fair voice throughout this entire value chain. So farmers, they can own their data and remain in control. And with fair data, we also hope to create value that will flow back to the farmer. So that's our first attempt to define what fair data is. And how do we want to work? Well, quite simple in 3 levels. At the farm, try to get fair value for the product and the data, the storytelling surrounded around the product. The businesses offering direct access to high quality data on responsible production and compliance beyond sometimes very costly and inefficient checklists by auditors. And then thirdly, consumers get access to impact stories and a new and connected product experience. So that's how we think we can develop our fair data proposition further. So what are we actually doing? We are now trying to work on 2 pathways. One is what I would call the arena of the influencing, the movement, and the other one is using ourselves as a user case through direct involvement. So on the first one, the movement, we are developing currently a manifesto. It's close to be shared, where we try to make a statement on how we think fair data should look like and why it is so much needed in the world. And I think that with such a manifesto, we can gradually work with important stakeholders towards a global roundtable for fair data. And that's more the influencing sphere of our work. And again, in the direct sphere, we also develop and test digital farm-to-fork solutions by organizing our first mile app store, engagement tools with farmers. Any kinds of tools are welcome. We have our own apps developed, but we are also working together with other app developers. We have supply chain tools, minimum viable propositions under development on tracing, on value for impact, on carbon sequestration, on best practices. We work on the unification of farmer profiles, digital identities, and we also hope to work on connecting platforms with partners towards standardization of data exchange. So those are the 2 pathways we're working on. And with that, I think I have used my time more than enough, and I have given you a first flavor of my new excitement. After 25 years of fair trade, we hope to move to fair trade of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeroen. It's great to hear your presentation, bringing actually a number of topics that has been covered in this digital food platform, because now this is our 10th talk. In the previous talks, we have we started developing this global roundtable to bring chain players from across regions and across disciplines. And then today, also in our audience, our participant, we have a number of speakers from previous talks. I see Christian Miller from Global Gap, who was in our launching talk. Also, Global Gap is developing, for example, Farm ID, and also the digitization certification practice. I understand probably Solidaridad is also working or in discussion already with Global Gap. And also in our audience, Marjan Smit from Impact Buying, that she was in our discussion a couple of times discussing the specific topic of digital identity for smallholder farmers. So welcome, Christian and Marjan and all other our loyal participants so far. So I hope to also hear from you later on during discussion about how is this our roundtable is actually shaping up, and also we have entrepreneurs today and app developers from Latin America, from Asia. Also like to Andreas is a coffee entrepreneur from Colombia and US. I see him joining. And Tiffany Tong, she's from Hong Kong, and she's working on the Nippo startup company to develop digital tools to help smallholder farmers on financing. So that includes on developing tokens and digital identity. So it would be really great to hear your comments later in our discussion. So let's start with before I introduce our second speaker, let's start with our second poll question. Bianca, please. So this question is after your Jeroen's presentation, based on your understanding, your own practice or your experience, what do you think is the biggest challenge of implementing sustainability, fair trade certifications in developing countries? They are all correct answers, so you can only choose one. What is the biggest challenge to you? So I would like to introduce the second speaker. Dick Epma is a professor at the Dell Digital Blockchain Lab. So blockchain has been mentioned subtly, indirectly, multiple times in our platform, but we never directly go into too much technical details. Because it's also quite mature, well-developed technology, though it's still a lot of to be done. But today we'd like to ask you to give us a bit of, let's say, the scientific understanding of what is, let's say, this enabling technology that can answer a number of these questions or challenges raised by this digitization of agri-food chain, especially on the issue of trust.
Okay, thank you very much, Tiffany. And thank you, Dick Veerman, for inviting me to give a presentation in this digital food series that you're organizing. Let me perhaps first share my screen with my slides, and then I'll continue. So let's first check out whether that works. It's visible to you now? I guess yes. So. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Dick Eekma. I'm the leader of the Distributed System Group at TU Delft. And so we've been doing for a very long time research in decentralized systems, and blockchains are decentralized systems. And so for us, it was a pretty natural progression to also start investigating blockchains a couple of years back. And I think this slide or my presentation nicely connects with the last slide of Jeroen about his tests with the digital systems for implementing fair trade, etc. I'm very much coming from a technical angle and technical background, so I'll try to connect to the theme of this whole series of digital food and fair trade. But on the other hand, I also want to point out a few things and a few insights in the context of blockchains, and hopefully this resonates with you, or at least get a better understanding of what blockchains can do and how they operate for this notion of fair trade. Let me first say a little bit more about how we're organized in Delft. About 5-6 years ago, we started what's called the Dell Blockchain Lab, which is a group of like 25-30 people in Delft of different angles in computer science, but also in ethics, and other parts in the university. And it was funded well, different funding sources, also the board of the university. Let me point out two things on this slide that I think are important. Well, first of all, so what we have in kind of as the title of our work is digitizing trust. So blockchain for us is just one of the components of the larger problem of creating trust between any types of entities in the internet. So we're doing much more than purely blockchain, but today I'll focus on the blockchain. And the second thing is when we started this like 5-6 years ago, we talked with many outside partners, government institutes, companies, etc., about application of blockchain. And they were basically all kind of targeting small pilots in their organizations to see whether blockchain could be beneficial for them. And from the beginning, and that's like now 5-6 years ago, we said, we're in this for a long haul. We think there's still very much lacking in the technology. And we have a research time horizon of 10 years, and we're halfway through now. And we really see still much work for the next 5 years. So for us, this is a very long-term operation. And we started, just before the big increase of the exchange rate, of the increase in the value of the Bitcoin. So there was lots of interest there and lots of hypes. We don't participate in this hype. We just have a very long-term plan, and that's what we're trying to pursue. Let me first, to set the stage, say a little bit about this general notion of blockchain. It's a little bit modeled after the Bitcoin blockchain, but you can look at it in a more general way. So basically, it's a chain of blocks, and the blocks are basically joint account statements of all the transactions that have happened, usually in about 10 minutes in the Bitcoin system. The main problem in Bitcoins and blockchains was to avoid being able to spend the same money twice, so the double spending problem. And the other thing is, basically you can participate in the system. You can read the complete system. You can read all the data that's in the system. So everybody can read it, but it's hardly understandable unless you're looking specifically at the parts that you inserted and that are meant for you. So that has a strong implications for the auditability of the system. It's open, it's free, everybody can read it, but hardly anybody can understand what's in it. And one of the big issues in blockchain systems is always who is allowed and who can add the next block with the transactions that have happened in the last period to this system. And that's where all this energy consumption in blockchain comes from, etc. I don't want to go into it. So Bitcoin system, especially also because of this energy use, is not a useful system for fair trade. It's too limited, it's too single-minded and focused, it's too expensive. And what Tiffany mentioned to me in our previous conversation is that Cardano is a system that's being used in this context. And I think this Cardano system is a way better system and has much nicer properties for the type of systems that you're after. Okay, there's a whole word behind it. I don't want to go into too many technical details, so let me go to the next slide. And that's, if people talk about blockchains, they have this kind of this general notion that it's trustworthy and the data in it are correct and you cannot change it. But the thing is, you can kind of dissect the functionality of blockchains in different directions, different dimensions. And I think it's good to distinguish these dimensions and also to see which of these elements you do need in certain application areas and which you don't need. And then perhaps the system can be simpler and easier to maintain, to install, and to manage, etc. So let me briefly go through these 5 different dimensions. So the first is consensus, basically confirming and agreeing on whatever happened in the system in the past. Now, in Bitcoin blockchain, that's done on a worldwide basis, and it's really a question whether you need this strong property to have consensus about everything that happens in the past and not on certain subsets that are relevant for certain people, or certain farmers, certain participants. Checking whether transactions that you're doing are valid. Well, it can be that you're spending money that you previously received. It can be in a supply chain that you're just moving the ownership of goods to somebody else that you received previously. So somehow that's a valid transaction in economic terms. That sounds like a useful property, of course. Uniqueness, so that different transactions don't use the same funds, that you don't transfer ownership of the same goods twice. Immutability, that's a very important aspect of these blockchains. So once you have entered data in the system, because of the mechanism of adding blocks, you cannot change it anymore. So you cannot later deny it, you cannot remove the data from it. And that's, of course, a very important property. You cannot also remove the data from other people. So you really have a confirmed past to which you can go back if there may be any conflicts in economic terms. And finally, do you have the right of access? Let's say, again, to move certain goods in the system. Can you show that you have the ownership of it when you take something and transfer the value of it to somebody else? So I think many of these properties are relevant for this application area. And perhaps this consensus is the most debatable one, and also one of the most complex one in blockchains. What I'm showing here is, we talked again with many outside people in companies and organizations, etc. So how they would like to use blockchains and what are the properties that they expect and what they don't like about, let's say, Bitcoin blockchain and what they would like to have changed in order to be useful for them. And the first thing is that in many of these crypto blockchains, anybody can participate. It's unpermissioned or decentralized, as it's called. And that means that anybody can read the whole thing, anybody can enter transactions, anybody can use it. And in many contexts, if you talk with banks or the Dutch Land Registry or other government organizations, they want to limit it to a subset of only trusted participants. And they're kind of the core of the system. The others can perhaps access it, but they're really the ones that check the validity of data, etc. So that really limits the system to a more of a closed universe, and it has strong implications for the structure of these blockchains. And the second one, and that's perhaps for me the most important one, if you're using blockchains outside of cryptocurrencies, is that in cryptocurrencies, basically everything that's relevant is stored in the blockchain. So people are trading, money, crypto coins, but you can code it in bits. So it's in a sense a closed system. There's no outside world. And you can check all the things that you want to check for the validity of transactions, etc., within the system itself. And everything that's entered is validated, and then you don't have to deal with the outside world anymore. On the other hand, the data in many blockchains, for instance with fair trade, with the land registry, with many other applications people have in mind, you somehow are mapping the outside reality to the world of this blockchain. So if you've got certification of goods, ownership of goods with certain properties, etc., you want to record it, but it has a reference to the outside world. And that means how do you certify, how do you verify these data? Who is allowed to enter it? Who validates it? Does it reflect reality? Doesn't somebody try to cheat? So I think this is a really very important distinction. It's good to understand this difference with ordinary cryptocurrencies. And the final thing is that we found, and many people find this, in the blockchain, basically in cryptocurrencies, you're largely anonymous. It's not very strong anonymity, but largely, and that's why criminals are also, using blockchains for storing their money, is you're largely anonymous, while in real applications, you always somehow want to refer to the outside world, and then you want to identify and point at people, locations for farming, etc. And so identities are really an important issue in this context of blockchains for outside, for non-crypto applications. Let me finally, with 2 slides, show you a little bit of what we're doing and point at a few things that we're doing in this Dell Blockchain Lab. Well, first of all, there's much research in cryptocurrencies and in blockchains that is very core mathematical cryptographic work, and people try to come up with the next clever protocol to satisfy certain cryptographic means for let's say, for checking and for storing and for encoding transactions. We much more from the angle that we want to build a complete system in which blockchain is only a part that can generate trust in the internet. So I'm pointing here the name of the system Tribal and the website. You can download it, you can use it, so for everybody to use. And we're always adding new components to it. And so, we built our own blockchain, which has way lower requirements for consensus. And basically, every participant has his own chain of transactions, and there are only links between the chains of transactions of one party when he interacts with somebody else. And then there's a link between these 2 transactions. It's basically the same transaction that occurs in both chains. You can also do checking on it, but it's way cheaper, it's way easier to use, it's way less, consensus-oriented, but we think that in many applications it will work fine. I'll talk a little bit more about identities on the next slide. And we are also looking more at the economic embedding of what we are doing. So in creating decentralized marketplace where people can do bids and can do buying. And then we also create our own token, in a sense, our own cryptocurrency for operating in this economy that we're creating. Also, by the way, with the University of Rotterdam. Let me finally say a little bit about identity systems and identities in computer systems. And it has always been, and it's still a huge problem. It's very difficult, especially if you want to somehow relate it to real identities of people, because then you need a source from where people are coming from. So there needs to be a good record in countries of where people are born, when they were born, what are their names, etc. And so if you talk about identity systems, there's at least one big distinction that you should make. And the first is basically what I call bootstrapping of identities. What is the source of the identity? Again, where were you born, etc. It really has as the basis, well, basically the government in countries. The other thing is, an important element of identity is also being able to recognize. So once you had an interaction, and then you can check later from the same number that it's the same personal entity with which you're dealing with. And that's just, in a sense, recognizing identities, and that's way simpler. If you just have numbers of certificates, numbers of parts in some industry, then you can just assign numbers and refer to them, and that's fine. But the source is then pretty lightweight, and if the source is heavier, and that's what we are dealing with also in our research, we're collaborating with the Dutch government on electronic passport, then this bootstrapping of identities is way more complicated with many legal and organizational issues. And so one of the things that we're trying to build in our system is what's called self-sovereign identities, really relating to persons. And the main thing there is, well, first of all, that somehow a trusted issue, government has to assign credentials to users, to participants, so that they can, on the basis of this, prove their identities. There's been lots of research, again, with cryptographic protocols, etc., for them being able to somehow control the disclosure of these data, perhaps only in separate pieces rather than the complete and all identity data of a person. And one of the things that we have been doing research on is also to guarantee anonymity in networks, because what's happening is that there's all kinds of messaging involved in this identity data. And even if, well, people who are trying to eavesdrop online cannot read the contents of the data and the messages, they may be able to see the message patterns and derive identities from the message patterns that people are generating when they want to show their identities. And that's kind of, well, that's misrepresented in research to also focus on this notion of anonymity, which can spoil the whole fun and the whole power of the disclosure protocols. So the self-sovereign identity is one of the important topics that we are currently working on, again, with the Dutch Ministry of the Interior. Okay, so with these topics in what we're doing in our own research, I would like to conclude. Are you? I can't.
Tiffany, you're still muted.
Okay, yeah, you're muted probably. Yeah. Still.
Right now?
That's fine. Yeah.
Now it's okay. Yeah. Thank you for the discussion. It's rather technical. It's maybe not easy for everybody, but these are, of course, very important topics to understand, because we are talking about important topics of managing governance for sharing data and how is to construct identities, which stands central in be able to track and trace also for payment. So that's a topic, of course, really underlying a lot of issues on policy discussions or regulatory frameworks. In our audience, we have also more expert on the topic, like Marjan de Smit. So later we can also exchange her experience on developing the true code, for example. I would like to ask Bianca now to show us the poll question on the last poll result. So the biggest challenge. Okay, lack of access and also the smallholder farmers not organized and difficult to identify as being the biggest challenges. Babatunde, you are the expert in helping farmers to export. You provide agro-extension services, you provide certification assistance, for example, and to help farmers to get certified, to get knowledge, to be organized. So what do you think are, your opinion, the biggest challenge for this process?
Okay, thank you so much, Tiffany. For me, for certification, I think one of the biggest problems, let me say in Africa, especially in Nigeria, for farmers is that in terms of the implementation, they don't even understand the certification process. Many of them want to really get certified, but they don't even understand what does it entail to get certified. And the second one that is also a challenge is the cost of certification. It's very difficult for you to say an association of farmers should raise something between maybe 3,500 euros to 8,500 euros, and some certification could be more than that. Most times it's very, very difficult for them to raise such amount of money even for the certification, aside the implementation. Because for implementation of certification, there are implementation costs. And, in Nigeria, one of the things farmers would think is, what is the key thing for me? Will I get premium price for my product? How am I sure that people will actually pay for it? Where are these buyers? And that is a major, major concern for so many of the farmers. And in terms of organization, I don't see organization as a problem. One thing about organization is farmer understanding that there is a structure. It's building structure into cooperative or association, which is one of the key things I've always tell maybe NGOs or organizations providing interventions for farmers, is that one key thing that is important for cooperative is for them to know the concept of group dynamics. How can they build structure into cooperative? And these things are not being really taught. Many people focus on the technical aspect of agriculture, but the management aspect of agriculture, I've seen that many organizations don't focus on it in terms of how to build group dynamics, how to actually lead, how to choose the right leaders, how to build a structured leadership, and how to build organization structure, even in cooperative or farmers association. So for me, what I see more as a challenge for farmers in terms of certification is the cost of implementation and cost of certification itself. And the second one is even the access to information of what is the standard saying for them to understand the standard. Thank you.
So also in our panel, if we have Christian Miller, if Christian, you're still there, I would like to maybe ask you also to give some comments about our topic today. I think a number of issues we also addressed during our previous talk. Hello, Christian. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiffany. Hello, everybody. I must apologize that I did have to miss Dick's second half of presentation. I had to step out briefly of an emergency, so I couldn't get the most important piece you were sharing with the additional functionalities of blockchain as much as I understand. But in principle, we are seeing that, and that is still the topic I had in the first time, it's all a question of governance. We have the technologies, we just have to choose the right ones, and we need to make sure it is like every technical company we've been trying to work in the past with in all these exercises, most of them somehow wanted to be either sort of the center of the universe and wanted to have the central platform idea. They wanted to perform our services as a central place. There was not very many really technical organizations and other organizations that say, oh, I'm happy to sit at the table as one-off. Let us negotiate on the same level around the table, and then we'll do a democratic process. Everyone either wants the technology in the center or wants to be the spider in the middle of it and that is something we're looking for like-minded people that do not want to be in that center, rather than, yes, I sit at the table, equal terms, and we come to a common solution. I think that is, for me, the key. And here, distributed networks are very good. Universities are good. We just need to step to the next level of collaboration, I think.
I think a conversation with you and Jeroen, you are the two leading certification bodies trusted in the world to actually address the question of how do you move forward to this decentralized roundtable, new technology development, because in the developing world, you just also heard from Babatunde, also it's a topic we addressed earlier, that the certification cost issue, that the big issue comes down to on the ground is whether do farmers get paid more, and also the process of getting the cost. So what would be the concrete steps for organization bodies, certification bodies, leading, let's say, trusted third parties to come together to go develop this nobody's roundtable? That's also interesting to hear Jeroen comments on this. And reduce the costs in the meantime.
It's no secret that Christian and we have been chatting on this topic already quite some time. So I think we totally concur. So my experience is the first step would be to have a set of like-minded people, and I'm organizing that now already with some actors who really want to contribute precisely as Christian said, not to be in the center of it, but towards this global movement where we really need different stakeholders together agreeing on a common set of principles on how to deal with data, how to ensure that transparency, that value, that the right voices are being heard as a countervailing power against the very large and dominant techno platforms who try to dominate industry, and in the case of food, also create exclusivity and locked-in situations. I mean, from a farmer's perspective, suppliers of integrated packages are your friends until their algorithm identifies that you're not interesting anymore as a farmer. So, who is the friend and who is the enemy here depends on the stage of engagement with such a platform. And we need to move away from propriety to open source systems. And I think Christian and we understand each other perfectly on this. But yes, creating traction is key. We need some very bold players who probably are now in the camp of enemies to transform them into friends with the shared vision. So I think that's the challenge we're currently facing.
Because in your presentation, Jeroen, you mentioned in your pyramid the importance to have voluntary and mandatory standards. So this government forces moving together with the voluntary certifications. And currently in EU, we have also addressed in our previous sessions a lot on the development of a European sustainability framework. Do you see, or is it being going on, should the EU, a government body, be incorporating fair trade into a mandatory standard? Is that the direction to go?
Well, that's currently happening. Again, we have to distinguish here between what I would say practices on physical goods, like with coffee, with tea, with flowers, etc. on the one hand, and then the realm of data. So on the physical goods, you can definitely see that after 25 years of hard work, 30 years of hard work, you can see that where regulators were failing and private partners were taking the initiative to a certain level, it's now good to bring it to the next level, where we want to bring the principles of this fair trade, or you could also say this internalization of sustainability principles into regulation. It's also dangerous because the keywords I see passing by from the EU, they're currently working on traceability legislation, focusing on due diligence, so checking companies at the port of entry in Rotterdam and Hamburg and Marseille, wherever, to see whether the product is free of deforestation, is free of child labor, is free of abuse of pesticides, for instance. It might create also an exclusivity framework. So also this needs to be done inclusively and raising the floor rather than raising the bar, as we always say. But that is in the continuation of physical goods. On data, building new regulations on data, I think in one of your previous sessions, you already concluded that regulation is always running behind the developments. And I think the time is not yet ripe to already organize fully fledged regulations on a fair use of data. We first have to create critical mass on defining fair data in the way at least I tried to do, which is not only about ownership and data privacy, but is particularly also on creating the economic value of the data to whom it belongs, namely the producer of that very data. And that is, I think, the distinguishment between GDPR-related fair data concepts and the fair data concept as I'm promoting it. And that is still time to take before we get to this critical mass. Sorry I took so long.
No problem. But the critical issue you just said is getting traction. So getting things launched, getting pilot programs, getting a roundtable with people who can complement and work together. And actually today we have, let's say, a lot of critical, important players already on the table. So the issue is, how do we go from here, linking entrepreneurs in developing countries, technology providers, app developers, with farmers. So I would like to, we are now actually open for discussion questions from our audience. And Babatunde, do you want to say something?
I want to say something with regards to what Jerome said. Now, and the focus is digitalization, how it will revolutionize agriculture. But the key problem, which has not been really be addressed. Now, apart from certification, what is the key thing? What will make a farmer embrace technology? What will make a smallholder farmers embrace technology? Now, we have established facts that there is issue of infrastructural deficits in Africa. And most of these smallholder farmers are in rural area, and most of the places are remote area where it is very difficult for them to access even internet facility.
Absolutely.
Now, and we want to make it the whole system transparent, where farmers can see how their produce goes, how much is being sold, where there is fairness of data, where they know what the data collected from them is used for. But another side of it is, what is actually the need of the farmer? Because over the years, I've realized that most times when we come with policies, we tend to make it from top-down approach. This is what we feel that will help farmers, but that is not what farmer feels that will help him or her. You know, when we come up with policy in this sense that, yes, when farmers see how their produce is being sold, how much is being sold, they will be satisfied. But a farmer is not interested in that. An average typical smallholder farmer doesn't want to know, in Africa, doesn't want to know how this data is shared. All what is concerned is, how much will he make from his efforts? His effort that is put in, will he give him a premium price? What other benefit will he get from this? And that is why I agree with Jerome about fair trade. Yes, fair trade in theoretical term is possible, but in reality, are we still saying that people are not using the farm? Are farmers truly getting the desired price for their produce? So these are the issues we need to look about when we talk about digitalization, because infrastructure is a big problem. A farmer cannot afford $100 smartphone. So how does he access a blockchain technology? So it's more realistic on book than in reality in practice. So when we talk about that, let's start talking about how can we give farmer a simple technology that with a small phone of USSD phone, a farmer can actually access some basic information rather than coming with a complex technology of blockchain, because smallholder farmers will not use it. Rather, maybe a commercial or medium scale farmer can afford that. Thank you.
Thank you, Babatunde. Let's also, there's already quite a debate in our audience, so please leave your questions. So I also ask you to speak up. But first, I also like to hear from other countries. Let's hear first from Tiffany Tong. You represent the Alloy Technologies. You are developing digital solutions for smallholder farmers. And you are from Hong Kong, like me, so hello. And so can you also, maybe coming also from responding to what Babatunde is saying, that what do farmers need? And then also in the comment area, Dick mentioned to reduce certification costs represent business opportunities for app developers, for technology providers, business case. So can you please respond from Alloy, from your mission, let's say, to help smallholder farmers to get access to better finance?
Thank you very much, Tiffany. It's a pleasure to be here and to listen and learn from all of you. What really struck me before was two things. One was the word trust in the blockchain slides before. And that is a deficit, right, around that table between everyone, including from the farmer's side. And that's what we found. It's for us, we work in the microfinance industry, hoping to help farmers in the different parts of the value chain being able to access affordable input financing. And to do that, we have built a loan insight software that uses digital tokens to track this business financing input. And as Babatunde said, not everyone can access a smartphone. And that's why even though our technology will be based on a blockchain very soon, it actually is accessible using the simplest phone you can find through SMS, no mobile data needed. And I think personally, from our company's point of view, that is exactly the kind of technologies that are needed to help build this on-ramp to this information highway that we're always talking about and this extraordinary growth of technology. But how do we get everyone to be able to get on that on-ramp so that they can share the profits and share the benefits of these technologies? And I think we need a lot more social entrepreneurs being in that space to be able to look at those problems and see what kind of technology is out there and how can we design it to be the most user-friendly, to be beneficial for women, to be beneficial for youth, so that they can use these technologies. And going back to the word trust, that's exactly what we find, is that there is a lack of trust between the microfinances and the farmers that we work with. And therefore, using technology, we're trying to build a mutually beneficial relationship by helping the farmer increase their formal records and digital footprints. We can help them access more loans and increase their alternative credit score type of data that goes into their credit scores, and therefore be able to grow as entrepreneurs and grow their farms. So we see huge potential in technology being able to help with those economies of scale and to automate the monitoring in the field, to automate building those records, and so that everyone can actually own their data and then say, hey, I want to take this to that microfinance instead. Thank you.
Thanks. So building, actually, you in some basic also answered a question I discussed earlier with Dick Epma about, also he raised in his presentation, is who is collecting and verifying the data? Basically what's happening on the ground. So that's actually the same, you answered that by having companies that's locally embedded, working closely with community. So this is a similar technology can be applied in Africa, working with Babatunde, for example. And then for the farmers, they don't need to know blockchain. They only need to be able to just use a simple digital access with simple mobile phone to enter necessary data. But then the underlying technology, let's say the global infrastructure, that's based on, let's say, the trusted, immutable, where you can really track all the way back, right? So that's very important to actually combine effort from the global organization with community, locally embedded companies like yourself, like Babatunde also.
And local microfinances, local vendors, local farmers, we're trying to build a local ecosystem really from the ground up. But how do we get them to integrate globally? That's, I think, the key question going forward.
That I think will be a good question going back to our panelist and for our participant on tables working on, let's say, the global north side. And I'd like to also now to ask Andreas from Colombia. You are calling from Bogota. Andreas, can you switch on?
Hi, Tiffany, and hi, everyone, and thank you for the invite.
Yes. So, Andreas, you're entrepreneur developing a premium coffee brand for American or also Latin American customers. You source, I understand, from Peru, Colombia for your coffee. So we
Correct.
talked about actually directly relating to this coffee producing trace, the smallholder farmers. Can you maybe from a brand or sourcer point of view, how do you see the challenge of or your experience working with farmers and to implement, let's say, traceability for certification?
Correct. So the thing here is that I'm thinking that we have two groups of farmers, for example. The first farmers are the ones that they really need help. They want to go further and they need technology and they want to be able to become a part of this world of business and to grow up, right? But the other thing, the other hand, we have another farmers that they can cheat us and they can corrupt all the data because they can participate in the certification, and once they have it, they can start changing things about their business. So, for example, things that are happening, and that's a reality here in Colombia, for example, when they see they have macroeconomical issues of the country or exportations and everything, they can start changing the product that they have in their farms. For example, here in Colombia, they can move from coffee to drugs very easy. And everyone here knows that it's a really good business for them when they change to something like that. So that's a concern between local business and the local farmers, because a lot of them can cheat you. And I understand that in your country, like you can trust a lot in different producers and vendors, but here we have a lot of them that can cheat us, and they can, for example, they can sell you high quality bean coffees, and then when you start buying them and you start receiving them, you can see that it's not what they promised and what they are giving to you through data and through the process of selling. So a lot of companies here, what they are doing here in Colombia is that they are creating centers of support for the local farmers, but that implicates that you have to increase your costs and that you will have to create like some presence in other regions of the countries so you can be closer to them. And when you are a small business or a startup, it's not going to be able to do it for you. It's a cost that you can't afford. So I think that a solution could be that we can create between all the small groups and small countries like a network just to check and verify, as Tiffany Tong was saying, to verify all the data and to have some volunteers and some people that it's all the time verifying all the sales, the plants and everything what they are doing, and we have to become a part of their processes because it's so nice that we can try to help them, but the other thing is that we can be cheated on that, and we spend a lot of money and a lot of time like creating a brand recognition and a brand promises. And when you create all the ecosystem of the farmers and you get the exposure of them in front of your customers, one mistake of them can cost you the company. So that's something that we have to be worried about it. And I think that the data can be corrupted when the data becomes from the source, you know?
Yeah,
I think, thank you, Andreas. Jeroen.
Thanks
so
to all of
you heard the comments from actually Dick also. You heard comments from all around the world, let's say. And you mentioned the importance to, let's say, start a fair data trial, let's say, of pilot programs. So what do you think? Can we start to connect our agriculture co-ops, tech providers, and also entrepreneurs and with a global organization to start a pilot?
Absolutely, we should look into that. You may recall I gave two concrete work streams. One is what I would call the influencing the movement. That is to influence larger players in the field of agriculture, but then also the other pathway is to build concrete business models. And yes, those concrete business models are linking the principle of fair data to concrete commodities. So to Babatunda, I would like to say, for me, fair data on farm level helps farmers to move from good agricultural practitioners to good management practitioners. So by mastering your data and also having access to your own, let's say, intelligence, you will be able to create access to finance, access to better markets. So we are very much boots and brains on the ground, as we call it. So for me, the purpose of fair data is also to help farmers to use their own intelligence in a systematic way to improve their business case. And to Andres, I would like to say we are actually working on a blockchain-based melange tool to ensure the authenticity and the immutability of a series of coffees that feed into an e-commerce model linking selected co-ops to dedicated roasters with a story that goes beyond certification. So yes, the business models in relation to fair data are huge. So again, I want to distinguish what I would call the direct scope of influence with commodities and farmers where we are working with on the one hand, and a global movement with large players like Unilever, Google, and whoever wants to be part of it. On the other hand, also having a segmentation for farmers, so like a roundtable. So those are two different pillars of operation. So it can be very concrete. That's all I wanted to say, Tiffany.
Great, thanks. I think there's a lot of exciting initiatives you can see actually happening at the global level and also on the local level. We have also a number of questions from the audience. I would like to ask, I think, Otto Kruisen. Would you like to explain your question and your comment?
Well, it is a bit questioning that I'm doing because
Can you explain who you are with?
Oh yeah, so who I am. My name is Otto Kruisen. As you see, I work at the Delft Center for Entrepreneurship, and I've been involved in many student projects in smallholder farmer issues. And there I have experienced that trust always is an issue. It is already mentioned. But not only between farmers and people from the top, or say agricultural experts, or if you are from fair trade institutions, that they also do not trust you, they also do not always trust each other. And that makes cooperation a difficult issue, and that makes cheating easy because nobody can trust nobody, actually. And you need somehow to make the system work, a change of atmosphere in that respect, and that also needs to be built up from the bottom up. I missed that a bit in the discussion. It's my observation, and I'm asking, well, why is this lack of trust coming from? One thing that I have always seen, the African farmer, my experience are most of Africa, we always avoid to be in control of somebody because people always want to make you dependent, to hide you and put you in their network and make them dependent on you, whoever it is. So stay out. So let's say a comment and a question and I'll comment with a question mark, but I do miss that in the discussion. I can just summarize it in one thing: how to build up trust from the bottom up, also amongst the farmers.
Okay, that's great. You want me to respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Otto. I think let me just give you an example. I've been involved in a project since 2019. It's a Rainforest Alliance certification. of farmers cultivating hibiscus. And one of the key things when we started this project was that we had issue of trust. And for us as a company, what we had to tell our client, who is an exporter, is how can we build trust, that farmers can trust us with our words. And first, we need to actually come to their level. Now, building trust starts from engaging farmers from planning stage. We didn't engage farmers when we wanted to implement the rainforest certification, but we engaged them from the planning stage. Why are we doing what we are doing? What we really want to achieve, and what we stand to gain, and what they stand to gain. We didn't go to them as if we want to give them an intervention program. No, we made them realize that this is a business. As much as we want to profit from it, we also want to empower you, improve your community, and these are the things. Then we started from there. Then in the program design, we designed it with the farmers. They sent their representatives. We carried their leaders along with the whole process. Then in recruitment, we also recruit extension officers that lived with the farmers. So the extension officers visit the farmers. They know them. They know what, they have this interaction with them. So that way, we actually built trust. And when it came to, when they actually harvested the produce and the training, we also came up with what type of training you want. We came up together with that. They also told us this is their need and this is what they want. And this is how they feel that their need can be met. So we came up with, okay, they have given us solution to what they feel that is how. We implemented it, and we implemented it with them. So they accepted the project as their own, not we coming to give them the project. No, it was there's a self of ownership. There's a sense of belonging. And then at the end of the day, after harvesting, we promised them that every rainforest certified produce, we are going to buy it at 5% higher than the market price. And at that point, the 5%, the market price was the prevailing local price. So they are always aware of their local prices. So every week, our extension officer will say, this week, the local price is so amount of money. We are paying 5% higher than it. They bring their produce and we pay them immediately. So with that, after the first year, we realized that more farmers came to us in the second year, that they have more farms that they want to include in the program. At first year, many of them just gave us only one farm. But we realized that in the second year, some of them have 3 farms, some of them have 4 farms. So in the second year, they came and said they want to include other farms into it. That is where trust is built. I think where trust is built is when you are involved, when you involve them from the very beginning, which is the planning phase. Let them know your intentions. Let them know what they are going to profit from it and what you as an organization will profit from it. I think it gives them this satisfaction. It gives them this sense of belonging, and always be true to your word. They told us that from their experience, they realized that there are sometimes, some years back, some people came in the name of certification. After they gave them their land, they collected their land from them, and nobody was able to fight for them. So that was what really brought the issue of the friction at the beginning. And up till now, this year, we started with 234 farmers. This year, we are increasing to about 1,500 farmers. And it has, and it is within the same locality because more farmers are coming on board to join. And aside from the economic benefit, we also introduce the social benefits. Like there are some things that we also identify in the locality, in the community, which is their need. We discuss it with them, and they come up with it and say, this one, don't do it. It's this ones that we need. We don't need this one. Some of them will tell you they don't need primary school. They don't need school. Just give them access to healthcare facility. That is what they feel is their need. But as soon as we provided maybe buildings for primary school, they will not accept it because that is what's in their need. So is how we build trust is when they feel that they are part of the decision-making process. They trust the process and they see that we talk and we do it. We talk and do, not that we just talk and talk. but we talk and to it build trust. I think that is a very good way to build trust. Engaging in them and making sure that they are part of the decision process. Thank you.
Thank you, Babatunde. A lot of passion. So, Otto, did Babatunde answer some of one or your comments?
Well, his passion should convince me, and partly it does. The thing is, despite all good intentions, also the farmers do not trust each other, and it is quite difficult to build up cooperatives between members who do not trust each other. And how to address that issue is a remaining question.
Yes, that's also a question. Maybe some audience or Tulu Lupe mentioned. There's a lot of disparities between smallholder farmers. Don't know if you want to comment on that. Sorry, did I pronounce your name right? Tulu Lupe?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Well, of course, there are these disparities, but if you are always dependent on some important person, you will always feel as a farmer that if somebody is related to an important person, he will take advantage of that, and you will compete for it. And you will not, it is a continuous circle, and how to bring a rupture into that is really a question. I think I don't. It's good. I don't feel it is addressed, but I know it is a difficult one.
Yes, thanks, Dick, Professor Epma. Maybe we can come back to you.
Yes, hi.
Because you gave a discussion about the science behind blockchain. They also discussed the development that TU Delft is doing, and being a leading institution, being a scientific institute, you also talk about the issue of trust. So based on the audience response, really the people on the ground, you heard probably different perspectives for working on different parts of the chain. So I'm curious, what do you think about when you heard the challenges and needs on the ground, and how does in Europe, in the Netherlands, developing technologies, how do you see that can benefit, like practical survival, sustainability issues on the ground in the world, other parts of the world? Is it trust chain developed only for Dutch use or EU use, or how do you see that? Can you work with Tiffany Tong earlier for this to be used in Nepal, India, and Africa, for example?
Well, the short answer to your last question is, I show the email or the web address where you can download our trust chain software. So it's for everybody to use. Whether they can use it completely without our help or instructions, that's another matter. But if people are interested, we're happy to communicate with them and see how they could benefit from it or how they can try and use it. And it's supposed to be a general, basically replacement of blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain, that's much more lightweight. And I think that would fit this application area pretty well. Although, you would really have to test it to see whether that really is true. And there may be more details that I don't quite see that should be implemented. My other comment is, I'm very much... Was there any other comment? Okay, let me continue.
Go ahead.
Then I'll continue. My other comment of this is, I'm very much looking at the technology, the science behind blockchains, etc. Of course, also we feel a little bit in the center of the universe because that's the core of the whole thing. But I'm very much aware, also with my experience with working with the Dutch government on many projects over the last 25 years, that if you really want to implement and use technology in a certain application area, the technology is only 20% of the problem or less, and really all the organizational matters, financial matters, political matters around it, to get people to collaborate, to let them identify and define what they really want, to have people cooperate, to somehow satisfy all the rules that may have to be taken into account. That's way, way more complex. So, working with the farmers in Africa, convincing them, really defining what you would really like to record, what type of fair data, what is the easiest way of access to these complicated systems in Africa. Although I think you can come a long way, if you would explain the structure of the telephone system and the technical details behind it. People would say, I don't want to use this complicated system because I can't access it. But you can just pick up a smartphone or any mobile phone and you can easily access it. So you can hide much of the complexity. But really the reality around the technical system, the computer system, that's the most difficult part.
It's technology is indeed at the heart of this. Of course, we'll talk about digital transformation. So technology is at the core, but technology is also very confusing because, for example, we talk about the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is only using one, let's say, consensus mechanism, which consumes a lot of energy. That's now at the, let's say, the crux of debate nowadays. You hear it a lot. But for example, there are other mechanism that doesn't cost a lot of energy, which is not really understood by people. So then there's also a lot of initiatives developing on, for example, Marianne de Bok-Smith, she left. Unfortunately, she, together with the Consumer Goods Forum, they're developing this True Code, which is a digital identity for smallholder farmers. And we went very much in detail in previous sessions. Global Gap, you just heard, also developing Farm ID. You are developing a trust chain, which is an alternative to blockchain. So as technologists, how do, even people in technology are also confused what's going on, who's doing what. So how do people, I don't know if for Jeroen, for example, when Dick already mentioned a few times that this trust chain could be very useful for the fair trade application. But you probably are not really investigate all the pros and cons of all different kind of systems. So how do go forward when technology services is still kind of battling to find a standard?
Well, also for us, it's a very confusing world. The world of blockchains, if you look at it, there's probably hundreds of different systems. There are thousands of cryptocurrencies. There are many proposals, many things. Well, a few things have been well tested. Some things have not been well tested, but may still be promising. So it's a very scattered world. And also in terms of application of blockchain, it's a very scattered world. There are many different applications that people kind of proposing for being implemented in blockchains. Sometimes I ask myself the question, would you really need a blockchain here? Can you just use any ordinary database and then it's simple, you can just go ahead and you don't need all the complexity and the cryptographic protocols and whatever. And but the application area is also very scattered, there's many different application areas with many different requirements. And so you cannot expect a single blockchain to emerge from all this and being kind of the general thing that you can use. And that's it. It's a very scattered world for us as well.
Thank you. But that's why important that we keep also communicating, understanding the development, because it's rapidly developing, but it's very relevant to everybody, especially in the food sector, to understand, whether decision to use or not to use. That's also.
And in general, for this field of digital food, fair trade, it seems to be more important to make a well-considered choice, perhaps Cardano, which is a nice system, but to move ahead with pilot applications so that you can show to the farmers, to the politicians, to the governments, that you can indeed build such a system and use such a system to show the concept that you want to push. I think that's way more important than spending 3 years on deciding what is the best technology. For the whole field, that looks to be way more important than for the farmers and the large number of people that may have benefits from this. That's way more important in my view.
Yes. But it's just one conclusion. We also know there are a lot of smart people like you, scientists, that behind the development of technology. So we can also safely assume in the coming years the technology will only get better, but it's indeed important now for the people on the ground to say, how do we get a pilot going? So we have a few minutes left. I don't know if any question from the audience. Otherwise, I would like to ask Jeroen Papadoen to give a kind of concluding remark. Jeroen, it's a final question also come down to how do we move forward with a pilot?
No, well, actually, we are working with a series of pilots at the moment, sure, I look forward, Babatunde, to work with you on some trust-based experiences beyond certification. Blockchain can definitely be an interesting feature to it. I mean, we are working with a blockchain-related tool set. We call it Trinity. It's been built on a T experience, but it can be easily replicated to other areas. And Babatunde, I work also with IVR, which is the connected voice response system, which is very interesting for many farmers who don't understand anything about blockchains. But we have a permanent dialogue with just in the case of Ghana alone, in the cocoa farm industry, 65,000 farmers. And that creates very concrete change paths towards what I just said already, moving from good agricultural practices to good management practices, business practices. And with good information systems, we jointly can create micro-investment schemes and really improve the business case for farmers involved. That is our core business, and farmers first. And on the blockchain dimension, of course, we like the efficiency potential, the transparency potential. Not always all market players like the transparency potential. But the big thing here, Dick, is can we indeed create a model whereby assurance on the sustainability can be, I would say, sort of accelerated through blockchain-related solutions beyond a label? Because as creators of many of those labels, we also see what I said in my opening pitch, the weaving error, that a lot of costs that are being paid at consumers level, fair trade still has a premium system, that a lot of those premiums are sort of absorbed by the certification system and are not reaching the farmers. So if we can make a more effective and efficient a system to transfer those value adds to farmers, then I think we're doing a good thing, and blockchain can be instrumental to that purpose.
Thank you. Great to hear. This is also a question from Andreas again about, as a startup, how do you start with blockchain applications, pilot programs? I think that's something we can probably connect our panelist participant later. Babatunde, I would like to ask you to give a concluding remark of our session today.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe so much in the future of food. Actually, is hinged on digitalizing some processes in the agricultural sector, and in the Africa sector, I think we need to start from the known to the unknown, and from the known is how can we use simple technology to actually increase the efficiency and process of agriculture. Not only the technical aspect of agriculture, and also the governance structure of cooperatives and associations, how farmers can come together. We understand their needs, we provide solutions to them, with them, and them building a project together, having a sense of belonging, and achieving what is sustainability. That is what I see as sustainability, when farmers can come together and accepting a problem and building solutions together. And at the end of the day, they see a great, it translates into a great impact to us. Yes, I believe in the future, and I actually believe in providing digital services to farmers. But it starts from the known to the unknown. So when we solve the problem, which is a known problem, when we can solve the problem with simple technology, then we can move from there to the unknown, which is the innovation, like a blockchain, and where farmers can even afford a smartphone to get a blockchain, where farmers have built capacity to understand financial literacy. At that point, then we can come into the complex technology, which is easy for them to accept. Thank you so much.
So thank you, everybody. I would like to thank all our panelists, Dick, Jeroen, and Bartunde for the presentation and feedback. And also like to thank everybody who's joining today and also participated in the question and debate. In 2 weeks, we'll have our actually last session, is the last one? Session in this 6-part on standard and the sustainability framework. We'll come back to the EU sustainability framework discussion. So continuing what we already touched today. Also the topic raised today on pilot, on bringing stakeholders together on Roundtable will be followed up on the second half of the year. So thank you very much. And great dialogue again, also indeed. I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good afternoon, Tuesday. Bye-bye.